What's the story, everyone? Welcome back to Get a Games Fan TV. How are we all getting on? How is the form? So here we go then. The All-Ireland Football Championship quarterfinals are here this weekend. And in this video, we're going to be previewing and predicting all four of the All-Ireland quarterfinals. And what a weekend it's set to be. In my opinion, we do have the best 8 teams left in the All-Ireland Football Championship, which doesn't always work out that way. But the fact we are left with the best 8, I think, is what makes this weekend very, very interesting. I think all of 4 of the games, in my opinion, could go either way. You could make predictions either way with a lot of these games. There will be favourites, of course, and there will be certain teams that will be predicted to win over others. But if this championship has taught us anything, is that doesn't always go according to plan. And in my opinion, this really, really could go either way when we're looking at it. And I really do think between a lot of these games, you could make predictions either way. But nonetheless, we're here to preview the games, predict the games as well. We're even going to be dropping score predictions for these games as well. So we're going to go all out in terms of predictions for this weekend. If you're new around here, consider hitting the like button and subscribe. We do a number of previews, reactions, and everything else. And of course, we are going to be reacting to these games as they happen, and as well as doing previews for next weekend's games and everything else, obviously with the hurling semi-finals. So for anyone who's new around here, hit the like button and subscribe, and let's get straight into it. We'll start with Monaghan versus Donegal. And lads, I'm not too sure if many people have seen the statement that Donegal released, saying that they're not happy with the fact that there's only a 6-day turnaround. Look, to be fair to Donegal, they do have a point. As much as Jim McGuinness has become a bit of a moany bastard, I mean, like they do have a point. Look, a 6-day turnaround, it is a little bit unfair. I do think the teams that played last week on the Sunday should be prioritised to play Sunday this week. There should be a bit of a turnaround. Look, I do get it. And I do get the, frustration a little bit from Donegal supporters. And I do get it from the Donegal County Board. It is classic, though, isn't it? Just build a siege mentality, everybody against us. I feel like Jim McGuinness probably secretly maybe is happy about this because he can build that sort of narrative that everybody is against us, everybody is out to get us, and that will just suit sort of his sort of narrative building into this Donegal side. And look, in terms of the game itself, I mean, both of these two are obviously very, very familiar with each other. It is a bit of a mad one with Donegal. Like this is their 9th championship game this year, and it will be their 7th versus an Ulster team, their 2nd versus Monaghan as well. Donegal have had to do this the hard way, and look, maybe they can feel a little bit aggrieved in regards to that, because they have had some amount of games, and the amount of games they've played against top level opposition, like, a part of me does feel it's bound to catch up with them at some point, and a part of me wouldn't be surprised if they were a little bit leggy, if they were a little bit undercooked going into this game. And like, as much as it's creating a siege mentality, it's also like building excuses a little bit, and there's already a narrative there. If Donegal lose this game, then we all know it's going to be because of the 6-day turnaround and everything else. Look, Monaghan are a very, very good team. Like, it's a weird one because Donegal this year have mainly just had to play Division 1 teams and top teams and everything else en route to this stage. Whereas Monaghan, it's been a little bit different. They obviously played Donegal and Ulster. They got knocked out, albeit it was, a close enough game towards the end, but I felt like it was a game Donegal were always looking comfortable in terms of winning. But then Monaghan have, won their group, playing a level of opposition that, with all due respect, I mean, none of those teams are left in the championship. Down, Louth and Clare are all out of the championship. They're not in the quarterfinals. So Monaghan haven't had to play the same level of opposition that Donegal have played. So it could go one or two ways. Like, Monaghan could be a little bit undercooked going into this game, and maybe not having played the level of opposition since Donegal themselves. Whereas maybe they could be refreshed, they could be energised, and they could really catch Donegal cold. I'm going to say, though, that this is neck and neck game. I think Monaghan are going to come flying out of the traps. I think Donegal are going to be quite leggy to begin with. I think the likes of Stephen O'Hanlon, Conor McCarthy, Micheál Bannigan are going to light the floor up in Croke Park. And I think this is going to be an absolute humdinger of a game. Do you know what? In terms of a prediction, it is so hard to call. I'm sort of torn between the two. I genuinely could see Monaghan win this game. I think there is a bit of a surprise, a bit of a shock there for Monaghan to win this. They have the players who can absolutely hurt Donegal. They have the players with these 2 pointers as well, in particular Rory Beggan. You don't want to be giving away frees because in Croke Park he's going to be nailing them. And as well that Monaghan are going to take advantage on multiple occasions, especially from kickouts. So Donegal could really struggle there. What I would say, though, is that what impressed me about Donegal versus Louth was that They started the game quite slow, but then they raised their intensity in the second half and they just stepped it up a level. They did very similar versus Mayo as well after that goal from David McBride. Like, Donegal just raised the ante a little bit more. And I think they have the ability to do that. And I think Monaghan will lead this game for the majority, is what I'm going to say. But Donegal will just slowly pick them out. And I'm going to say a big goal from Oisin Gallen in the second half for Donegal turns the tide. It sends the game to extra time, and Donegal will nick it from there. Paddy McBurty will come off the bench and kick some absolute beauties. And Donegal are going to win this game by a point. Going to go Monaghan 25 points, Donegal 123. Donegal are going to win this game by the smallest of margins. And honestly, I think this even could be one on the hooter, to be honest with you. I think Donegal might just kick the winner. I think they'll just about edge it. I am worried about Donegal to a certain extent, though. I think they have had a lot of games. I think the intensity, in my opinion, will catch up with them. But I think maybe it might be a semi-final that they get caught. I think for them to win the All-Ireland from this point would be incredible, given the amount of games that they've had, the short turnovers and everything else. It would be incredible for them to go and do it. I think they will get caught somewhere. But whether they get caught this weekend, I'm going to say that they just edge it. We've got Dublin versus Tyrone, and lads, do people remember some of the absolute classic games between Dublin and Tyrone 20 years ago? I mean, we're actually on, like, we're coming up to the 20th anniversary of that goal from Owen Mulligan in Croke Park, which broke my young heart at the time. But, like, Jesus, I mean, seeing that live, you probably didn't even realise what you just witnessed, in all honesty, having actually been at that game and everything else. I think that game was actually a draw, and then Tyrone beat us in the replay, didn't they? But some of the games in the early 2000s, I mean, goodness me, Dublin and Tyrone, like, they had some amount of wars. And you know what? It's a little bit mad between Dublin and Tyrone, because in that era, in the 2000s, Tyrone would always beat Dublin. They would always have our number. Back when, you know, we weren't very good. Maybe some would say we're kind of back to that level now, but we always struggled. And I remember 2008, Tyrone giving us an absolute hiding. As soon as we beat them in 2010, you know, we went on and we sort of dominated this rivalry. And I think, you know, I might be wrong on this, but I don't think Tyrone have actually beaten us in the championship since 2008. So it's been a long time since they beat us. Obviously, they've beaten us in the league. They beat us in the league this year. Look, as a Dublin fan, I'm worried a little bit for their attacking prowess. I don't know how we're going to deal with Darren McCurry, with Dara Canavan. And when you look at both teams from an attacking standpoint, like, I think Dublin, very reliant on Con. Is he going to be fit? Is he going to play? That's obviously going to be the big question. If he plays, it gives us a massive chance, but whether it's enough, I'm not entirely sure. But we know the damage that certain Dublin players are going to do. There's going to be a reliance on Cormac Costello to drag us over the line. Kieran Kilkenny is going to have to be the engine in behind. We're going to need a big performance again from Sean Bugler. Midfield worries me a little bit. Our midfield, I thought, really struggled versus Cork. Our midfield was brilliant versus Derry, and for us to do that against the midfield with the likes of Conor Glass and Brendan Rodgers, that gives me confidence. But then we struggle at top versus Cork. So whether it's Patrick Cofick-Byrne and Killy McGuinness, to be fair to Brian Howard, who played almost as the extra man in midfield at times for Dublin in the second half, that made a huge impact, and hence how he ends up getting his goal. So it's a huge game. I think Tyrone might just have a little bit more than us, though. I think their attack, I think you look at their defence versus our attack, and our defence versus their attack, and I think our defence will struggle, to be honest with you, to deal with the pace of a Darren McCurry. I think we'll struggle to deal with, you know, runs in behind from Michael McKernan and Peter Hart coming off the bench, these lads. I think it will be a very close game, though. Like a lot of these games, it will be back and forth. It'll be neck and neck. But I'm going to go, and it pains me to say it, look, I want to predict a Dublin win. Of course I do. To be fair, a lot of Dublin games I've predicted us to lose, we've won. So, you know, do you know what I mean? But look, I think Tyrone will win it. I think they will win the game. I'm going to go 2-17 to 1-17 to Tyrone. I think Cormac Costello will get a big goal. I think in terms of how this game will go, I can see Tyrone starting very, very strong, very, very fast. Dublin have started a lot of games very poorly this year, and we started slowly versus Meath. We started a little bit slowly versus Derry as well at times. Versus, it's weird. We kind of have this sudden burst at the start of games where we'll start matches quite well. We'll kick 3 or 4 points on the bounce and actually go in front, and then it's actually after that we seem to struggle. And I think once Tyrone get a grip on the game in the first half, we'll struggle to catch up to them. Cormac Costello will get a big goal in the second half, but goals from Darren McCurry and Michael McKernan for Tyrone will be too much in the end. So yeah, Dublin 1-17, Tyrone 2-17. We've got Meath versus Galway, and you know what? I'd have to warn the Galway supporters. I've seen a lot of people, and maybe it's not Galway fans, but neutral fans say, oh, look at Galway. They got the easy draw once again, getting the easy draw, all this stuff after having played Down in the last round. Look, Down wasn't an easy draw by any stretch of the imagination, and we saw that. It was only a 2-point game. It was very, very close, and it really could have went either way going down the home stretch. And mark my words, this is not an easy game. Have Galway, have fans not learned from what Meath done to Kerry, from what Meath done to Dublin? Like, this is, in my opinion, a real banana skin type nightmare game for Galway. And this is a draw, in my opinion, I don't think Galway would have wanted, personally. Look, obviously, in terms of draws, they couldn't have gotten Armagh. And I think in terms of teams, they could have got Monaghan, they could have got Tyrone. Look, it's hard to know what is the easy draw. There is no easy draw, in my opinion. Every game is tough. Every game delivers a different type of problem. And this game certainly does deliver a type of problem because Meath's attack is vibrant. It is so, potent, in my opinion. You've got Rory Kinsella, you've got Connor Duke, Owen Frayne. Is Matthew Costello going to be back? Jordan Morris as well. I've said it before, but there is 100% an All-Ireland in this Meath team. I'm a Dublin fan, and I'm being honest. Like I've been a big critic of Meath at times. I've always said that. I've always said they had talented players, but I always questioned sort of the county board and things that were going on behind the scenes, and appointing Colm O'Rourke, which was always a bit of a bizarre appointment. Some of the issues kind of with the senior team. Oh, look, we've seen some of that this year. People in the backroom team leaving as an example. And I always thought the mentality and the confidence within the Meath team was always under siege. But I think this year they've turned it around. There's no question about that. And the talent levels are rising through the roof, and they've far exceeded my expectations, to be honest with you, because for this Meath team to be young and this good. It honestly worries me a little bit as a Dublin fan as to what the ceiling could be for this Meath side. They've got serious firepower, serious attacking threat, and they have players who can kick points from a multitude of different angles, and they have players who can just take a game away from you, in my opinion. And we saw that with Kerry and Dublin. Before Kerry and Dublin could even wake up, the game was already done and dusted. And Meath remind me of a young kind of up-and-coming fighter who's just knocking people out left, right, and centre, and you kind of don't really know how to handle it, to be honest with you. It's like, we haven't seen something like this in a while. Do you know that way where someone, fresh and vibrant is kind of doing this? And I think Galway are going to struggle because Galway have been on the road consistently over the last couple of weeks. They've had a lot of intense games from, Dublin, Derry, Armagh, Down. You look at the amount they're conceding as well. They're conceding I think they've conceded 7 or 8 goals in the last 4 matches. They're conceding a lot of goals. They're conceding a lot of points. Obviously, with the new rules, defending is it's still there, but it's not as potent as what it would have been last year. You look at Galway's defence last year; they'd only conceded 1 goal from open play up until this point, whereas this year, that's completely the opposite way. They're conceding a lot of chances. They're conceding a lot of points though as well. And I think Meath are going to take advantage of it. And I honestly think that Meath are going to win this game. I think they're going to beat Galway, in my opinion. I just think some of their attacking players will be too much. Galway are coming into this potentially with some injuries as well. Shane Walsh didn't look right the last day. If you don't have him playing, I don't see how you win this game, to be honest with you. Yes, you've got Robert Finnerty there. Matthew Thompson's obviously been brilliant this year as well. And I think midfield-wise, I think that is an area that Galway can win with the likes of Paul Conroy. Killy McDade did here. He could potentially have an injury as well, so that could be an issue. Does Peter Cook come in? That's going to be interesting to see. But I think that is an area that Galway can win, in my opinion. But I think Meath are going to win the game, and I think it's going to be a case of Meath being so good in the first half and in the second half as well, and kind of building a lead. Galway will come back at different stages and will kick points, and maybe we'll get a big goal, I'm going to say, from Robert Finnerty. But I think Meath will hold on, and I'm going to go for Meath 124, Galway 119. I think Meath are going to get to an All-Ireland semi-final. I never thought I would have said that a couple of months ago. I never thought I would have imagined that at the start of the year. Look, I don't think Meath will win the All-Ireland this year. I will say that. I think there are teams that will be able to beat them. I think the likes of Armagh, Donegal, although Donegal potentially in a semi-final could suffer something similar, in my opinion, to Galway. But there are teams there that I think can beat this Meath side. I mean, we've saw it this year with Louth. I think there is still a bit of inexperience about Meath. What I would say is that if this is a tight game going into the final 10 minutes, I think Galway will win it. I think the way Meath will win this game will be very similar to how they've beaten Dublin and Kerry. I don't think it will be as dominant. I don't think it will be as comfortable, but I expect them to do it. I think their attacking firepower will be too much. Brian Menton as well. I mean, getting a big goal the last day versus Kerry, I think he could cause massive problems as well. Will Matthew Costello be back in? That's going to be interesting to see. But I think Meath are going to do it. 124 to 119. So there we go. I guess it's a bit of a surprise prediction, but to be honest with you, I don't think it is a big surprise if Meath win this game. Then we've got Armagh versus Kerry, and what a mouth-watering game this proposes to be. Probably the most anticipated game of the weekend, just given Armagh Kerry last year. It is two, you look at the All-Ireland favourites right now, and Armagh and Kerry are right up there as two of the big favourites. I've said multiple times before, I'm not convinced by this Kerry team, and I'm not going to change my mind just because they give Cavan a bit of an ass whooping. I'm still not completely sold. If they win this weekend, however, though, I will have to fully admit, and I'll have to hold my hands up and say, you would have to probably make Kerry favourites if they did manage to come through this weekend. But I don't think they will. I think there is an over-reliance on David Clifford. Look, David Clifford, as I've said in my last video, he is one of the greatest players that I've ever seen play Gaelic football. He's so good that he can carry a team, in my opinion. To score 3-7 the last day was the absolute definition of that, in my opinion. But they are so reliant on it. And a few viewers and stuff, and I know Brian, who often comments, says a lot of the time that Kerry do start a lot of their attacks and they always go down the left-hand side. And it is very evident, actually, when you kind of, have that in the back of your head and then you're actually watching them play. They are very reliant on Clifford, and I just don't think they have enough outside of him, in my opinion. Sean O'Shea's kind of been in and out. Paddy Clifford's been injured. Jeremy O'Connor's injured. Will we see Paul Gainey? That's going to be hard to know. You've obviously got a couple of the other Gaineys knocking about as well. But I just think Armagh will have a plan for Clifford. I think Armagh defensively are still, even with these new rules, like I know they've been conceding a couple of goals here and there, but a lot of those goals have sort of been, like the two Derry goals are obviously towards the end of the game. They conceded a couple versus Galway as well. But I think overall, in terms of an Armagh perspective, they'll have a plan. Barry McCambridge will probably go on David Clifford. You'll have the likes of Aidan Forker, maybe marshal him as well. And they'll cover off the space. There'll be a man to go on David Clifford, but they'll also have another man quite close as well to kind of cut off the space and cut off the passing lines or even the shooting lines. And I think Armagh will have a plan. And then going down the other end, although Stephen Campbell is going to be injured, and although he wasn't actually starting for Armagh, and I do think he's going to be injured for this game, correct me if I'm wrong, that could be a big miss in terms of a player that can come off the bench and make an impact. But their attacking firepower will be way too strong for Kerry's defence, who, in my opinion, has looked very, very vulnerable this year. And I think Armagh will have an absolute field day versus that Kerry defence. You're looking at Conor Turbot, Rory Grugan, Oisín Connaughty. Like, they will pick Kerry's defence apart. And then when you have Rian O'Neill in behind, pulling the strings, kicking 2-pointers, setting up scores, maybe getting on the end of things as well, I think Armagh are going to win, and I think they're going to be far too strong, in my opinion, for this Kerry side. And I think it will be not super comfortable, but relatively comfortable. 123 to 90. Yeah, I think Armagh will win the game. I think they'll be far too strong. I think in around midfield as well. Look, Joe O'Connor has been very good for Kerry this year, and he could potentially kind of come out on top in a 1v1 battle. But I think Armagh will be too strong. I think they'll be far too strong, in my opinion. Ethan Rafferty as well from kickouts. Absolutely outstanding. And I think Kerry will struggle. So there are my predictions ahead of this weekend's All-Ireland Football Championship quarter-final games. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know your predictions in the comments below. Look, I know I'm going to get a couple of these wrong. There's no question about that. And, the semi-final is going to be hugely interesting, hugely entertaining as well. But they are the four teams. I think Donegal will come through Monaghan. I think Tyrone will beat Dublin. I think Meath will beat Galway. And I think Armagh will have enough to get through Kerry. But do let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comments down below. If there's anything you disagree with, feel free to let me know. And until the next one, hit the like button, subscribe, and I'll see you all later.